back to Terra Monstrum. I'm Chauncey Haworth, and this is my co-host, Tyler Stenick.
We are reporting on Ghost in the Shell. Chauncey, Now, I wanted to begin with the intro, because it's been so long since I've seen the original anime. Do you remember if they did end up mirroring those intros like they'd said they were going to do?
They obviously mirrored a lot of the scenes. The intro, you mean when she's going through the construction process or whatever? Yeah, they did mirror it pretty well, especially that scene where she's sort of like coming up through the milk or the skin slab thing. That was pretty mirrored. Yeah, they mirrored it pretty good. I mean, it was definitely high-teched up a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, and I gotta say, I don't know, have you seen the animes, Chauncey?
I've seen 2 of the movies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've seen Standalone Complex 1 and I watched about half of 2. And this one definitely seems to be, I don't know if it's all 2 or if it's a mix of 2 plus some other elements. But that is the one where, she's chasing down what she was as a child, who she is. So.
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of the thing about this one is it's really fusing 2 of the movies, the first one and the second one being Standalone Complex. And the first one is Ghost in the Shell. And those are the 2 that I've seen, and really that's what it fuses, like even right down to the main baddie is a fuse of the 2 baddies from those 2 movies. Because in this movie, the bad guy, Kuze, I'm not sure how to say it, but I have to point out to our audience that at the moment of us recording this, I am a 42-year-old white man from Northern California, and while I appreciate the diversity that the internet has delivered into my home, I have a really hard time pronouncing things I didn't grow up anywhere near.
I mean, I'll blame you enough. I'll blame you enough for all of our listeners, Chauncey.
Thanks.
I'm glaring at my microphone right now. I hope you feel the shame coming through the airwaves.
I do.
Good.
I'm just like, I don't know how to pronounce this. I mean, I get that, it's a name. Kuze, I think it is. Kuze. And so in the original one, in the first movie, the bad guy was the puppet master. And in the second one, it was Kuze. And so in this movie, Kuze is kind of like her, another brain in a body, right?
Yeah.
In the original movie, the puppet master was like the very first sentient artificial AI life form that had evolved on the internet by itself.
I feel like that would have been a more compelling bad guy.
Well, and she wasn't even necessarily a bad guy. It was more like Frankenstein, the tragic.
Yeah.
Right. And that was my main disappointment with the movie is I was kind of expecting this like cerebral sort of like mind craziness that came with this sort of like AI that he had evolved on the internet, basically.
Yeah.
But instead, I got this thing, and that was like my major disappointment. Everything else, I have to say, I really enjoyed the movie.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. I felt like, I don't know, the plot felt. It's funny because it felt light, but it also felt like they didn't do enough world building at the exact same time.
Yeah,
because I think my best example of that is there's a scene in the movie where she's going into what you think is possibly a drug den. There's people getting like holes drilled in their head. There's powder floating around. And then after all that, you have our bad guy character show up and he's like, well, this is what this is. And, you don't know until he explains it. So you get like 3-4 minutes of footage where you're just absolutely confused because it's a new environment, new rituals from this group of characters we're seeing. Everything's brand new. There's no explanation. And I think it would have been nice if I don't know. This is one of the few times I can safely say I would have appreciated like even a text blurb at the beginning of some of these scenes.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And that's often the complaint of anything taken from a source material, especially a franchise of source material, where they're trying to please the fan freaks, but also bring in the new audiences. They always sort of like phone some stuff in, but touch down on it too much.
I hear your argument. I hear what you're saying. But keep in mind that our protagonist is an officer of the law.
Yeah.
So how easy would it to, before, Scarlett Johansson's going to any place in this entire film, to have a conversation with somebody just briefly covering where we're going and why we're going there.
Yeah, that is true. Can't she write a report?
She's a cop. I mean, They must discuss it beforehand. I know they're not. They're not.
Yeah,
somebody's not just coming up. A small child's running up, handing them a note, and then they go where it tells them to. I don't.
Yeah.
Don't feel like that's future police work.
Yeah, there's a lot of bullets and dead people in this. You figure there's a fair amount of paperwork they aren't showing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. So, but as far as like its lighthearted level and its sort of two-dimensional level, I really sort of gave up on that right away when I realized that we were dealing with something different for one, and also the whole setting of the movie in the original was like way dystopian. It was much it was kind of like Blade Runner, only if like half the lights had gone out.
Okay, because in the series, it's definitely a little more lighthearted. Like there's still natural environments around. It's more like what you would picture a future to be like, with a melding of traditional work and machine together.
Right.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about this one is it's really hard to find any sort of discussion about it other than the whitewashing. Which is weird because as something based on a comic or an anime, normally there's tons of like fanboys like complaining, but in this one the complaining was just so incredibly dominated by the whitewashing that nobody really sort of cared about all these sort of little things that probably would have made a much better movie.
Yeah. On the subject of the whitewashing though, Chauncey, did you read about the Japan's response to the film?
Yeah, and I get that.
They didn't care. They're like, no, Scarlett Johansson's the perfect person for this role. So I think it's really kind of funny too that, as I guarantee you that most of the people who were complaining about the whitewashing were white.
Oh yeah.
And I think stopping to ask yourself, like, does the culture that created this world, do they consider this to be a good casting choice or not? If they do, then maybe you're just viewing everyone in an anime series that comes out of Japan to be Japanese in the series, when that might not even be the case.
Right. I guess the guy who wrote the manga said that, the character was Japanese in there, but he thought that she was like the perfect pick and everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, if he's happy with it, I suppose who's anyone else to argue?
Right. Did you ever watch that show Parks and Recreation?
I did.
On the flip side, the Middle Eastern actor that's on there, he's a Muslim? Kamaj, I don't know his name. I don't remember, but I saw an interview with him about racism.
I know you don't mean Aziz Ansari, right?
No.
Okay.
No. And it was with him about then maybe I am not Parks and Rec. It's I don't know. Kamaj something.
I know the name. The guy who did The Big Sick.
Yeah,
movie?
I think so. Yeah, okay. I think so. But he's like talking about racism in movies and talking about how there needs to be more ethnicities in movies. And like they're arguing, they put the argument to him about like, well, what about making money and stuff like this? And he's just all, it's not that hard to watch a movie with another ethnicity in it and also totally identify, because I've been doing it my whole life, is basically what he said. And I'm just all, that makes sense. That why wouldn't they pick that? But also on the flip side, I mean, I am an American. I get it. I know what happens. This ain't the first time.
No, I know. But still, it's not like, there's plenty of things I like where the protagonists are not white.
Yeah.
And
well, it's better than Cloud Atlas.
I've never been like, ooh, I mean, let's be realistic, Chauncey. I don't look like anyone who's an actor because they're all real pretty people. So the race doesn't really matter. If we're talking about identifying physically with the person on screen, that's not typically going to happen for me anyway.
Yeah, hell, Alan Arkin was better looking than I am.
Yeah. I don't know if you ever saw that. Did you watch that Portland monster show. It's got the cop in it. He's chasing fairy tale monsters. It just wrapped up. Grimm.
Oh.
Did you watch Grimm?
No, I actually haven't.
Okay. Well, he's got a buddy on that show who's got a real goofy face, and I am much closer in appearance to his buddy than I am to him.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so I don't know. But yeah, it is. They just, I don't know. It's ridiculous. But we have to accept that movies aren't art forms anymore. You know,
You mean
movies,
like people aren't making movies purely for?
Yeah.
Yeah, no. I mean, everything's being bankrolled by somebody, and unless that somebody's willing to possibly take a hit, in their return, or have a broader view picture of it and can afford to put it out into other markets,
right,
we're going to keep getting what we're getting. But
yeah, and it's really just rarely ever happening. And sort of the era of directors that have the power to do that is slowly dwindling.
Yeah.
You know, I think the youngest we got right now might be Guillermo del Toro, who's like 60, you know?
No. I think considering the international market, like we're in the probably the best time for, cast diversity expansion, simply because it's so easy to put that movie into other markets.
Right. Yeah.
Look at the Fast and the Furious series. Like, that one gets talked about all the time for diversity and casting. And, just how well it does in all these other territories, because they can look at the screen and go, oh, that, that person reminds me of me, that they're putting me on screen. And, they can even film extra scenes. They're even filming extra scenes now for, specifically for the Chinese market or something like that.
Right, yeah. I watched, and this happens with lots of big movies. I watched The Meg, and like half of it was like filmed in like Thailand or something. Yeah. And they're just going all over the world. I think both for budgeting and like, hey, where can we afford to get 10,000 screaming people on a beach? Where are we going to find that? And you're not going to find that cost effectively here in the United States, I assume.
No. Not at all.
Or at least not without somebody throwing up middle fingers or doing something ridiculous in the
Yeah.
Right. So, we should probably get back to Ghost in the Shell.
We probably should.
It was a little disappointing as a Ghost in the Shell movie, but as a movie, it was as good as Valerian. It was as good as all sorts of terrible things.
Oh, I agree. Yeah. No,
yeah,
if we're going with the as good as game, it was as good as the movies that I would be willing to watch again.
That would be a funny functionality to put on the website. Like, like you could tag things like, well, what other movies was this as good as?
I think that's a good idea.
That's funny.
I feel like that gives me a better reference for stuff than, listing off specific scenes or trying to make real specific comparisons.
Yeah, totally. Because I mean, I have a different, like, my is this a good movie or a bad movie scale is totally different depending on who I'm talking to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, the good ass scale. I like it, Sean.
Yeah. So, my big disappointment with Ghost in the Shell was really, I expected something more cerebral. The main character, of course, was an artificial intelligence in the first one, and the world that it was in was just corporations, really. But the real world of Ghost in the Shell was like a whole lot of like racial and international issues and stuff like that. There was a much bigger sort of world battle going on than just some corporation trying to cover his ass.
No, in the series, it was always really political too.
Yeah. This movie was very iRobot 2. Which was good. I liked iRobot. But, it didn't really fit the sort of intense.
No, I get it. It feels small. It feels small scale. Like, your bad guy is always the person who operated on or gave the bad guy is always the person who gave the order.
Right.
To put our protagonists into the situation that they're in now.
Right. Yeah. And then they find their mom and they hug and there's the tearful scene and I wasn't anything before but a graffiti artist, and I just wanted to live my life and liberate people. That was not her backstory in the original.
No.
It was all it was a little teeny boppered out. But
yeah, no, I recall, I mean, here's why I'm disappointed I didn't finish Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex Season 2, because that's the one where they talk about her past, and I'm hoping that it's not all a dream sequence. But in that, the reason that she's as capable as she is because she was put into the suit like as a small child, like the earliest person to go into a sleeve,
right,
basically.
Exactly. Right.
And that's obviously not happening if they're capturing you as, whatever Scarlett Johansson's current age is, and then putting her into a sleeve. Where would the abilities come from?
Yeah, exactly. So like in the original, if you remember, she was basically the closest thing to a fully cybernetic life form that had ever existed. And then we have this evolution on the internet, and they're sort of like kindred spirits at the same time. And she like ends up like mentally bonding with it, and they become the same sort of entity. And like, yeah, I just, I knew at the beginning that I wasn't getting that. And so at that point, I just looked at special effects and laser beams, and I was cool.
Yeah.
Sad. It's a sad world we live in, but
that's true.
Well,
at least the next one is meant to be funny. Oh, we'll have a little more like solid ground to stand on.
Well, maybe we should move to it. I got nothing else to say.
Yeah, I'm out. I don't like. There's not too much to go in depth on.
Right. It's a roller coaster ride.
It's action. It's robots. There's some cool special effects.
Yeah.